Welcome to DisruptEDtv, where every little idea can make a big difference in your classroom or your school. And today we have a terrific guest with a very interesting idea. Kathleen Brady, who is the Executive Director of Career Services and Corporate Engagement at Georgian University. I hope I got that right.
You did.
That's great. Welcome to the program,
Thank
Kathleen.
you. Happy to be here.
Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Oh, terrific. And your disruptive idea, is that every undergraduate student could develop a personal brand that they could use later as they enter the workforce. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Great. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
You know, Gallup has done a study that says about a third of the American workforce is engaged. Mm-hmm. About 20% are actively disengaged. The other 50% or so just kind of there.
Okay.
And so you have to ask yourself why. And why are people working for a paycheck and not with a sense of purpose? Mm-hmm. And if you look back to career services and how we introduce students to the world of work, we are facilitating that process of just work for a paycheck. And when you think about career services, our job is to help prepare students for the world of work, but we're always about outcomes. So be an accountant because they have the lowest unemployment rate, or parents who tell their kids you should be a teacher, or why don't you be a nurse, all of which are fabulous professions. But if that's not your calling, if that's not what plays to your unique gifts and strengths, then it doesn't matter that you'll be employed your whole life because you'll be disengaged.
Right.
And so what my idea is to disrupt the way we deliver career services at the college level. And so rather than have it be the office that students come to the second semester, that first warm day, the second semester of senior year, when they go, uh-oh, graduation is just around the corner, I need a job, I better go get my resume done. Right. What if career services was incorporated into the very fabric of the academic side of the house in terms of meeting students when they're freshmen, from the minute they get on campus, not to talk to them about jobs, but help them in this whole immersion experience that they're having of transforming their lives. Of who are you? What are your gifts and talents? What are you interested in? And help them identify what those strengths are, and then build on them so that they can segue into the world of work and be engaged with a sense of purpose.
That's great. And as we were talking before the program, I was getting to understand your idea, I'm thinking to myself, it's not a course that you go to learn a personal brand. What you really do is support the entire faculty at Georgian Court to help them integrate the concept of personal branding into all their course offerings.
Exactly,
Is that right?
Exactly. That's exactly what we want to do. And that's a hard thing, and there's a little bit of resistance to that.
Sure.
Because someone who has dedicated their life to history or Chaucer or whatever it might be, their thinking is, my job is to educate the student, not to prepare them for a job. And they're absolutely right. That's what their job is. But just by adding a couple of sentences, not even a whole lesson, not even, but just say, the reason you need to understand about Napoleon's leadership style, how this is relevant to you, is if you're going into the world of work, these concepts apply there. And so making those connections for students. And I think career services, one of the things I like to think I do well is look at curriculum and say, or when students come to me and say, I'm a history major, what am I going to do with that? So, well, what have you learned? That's you kind of pick, what have you learned there? Well, how do you think that applies? And really help them do that deep dive and excavation, if you will, into how that is relevant to them. And it is.
Plus, you give them an opportunity to develop life skills.
Absolutely.
Well, the life skills get developed around what they're proud
Exactly.
of.
Right.
And it's their pride that motivates them through this whole process. So really what we're talking about, Joe, and why it's so fascinating to me, is most of the conversation is about what's your major.
Right, exactly.
But we're changing that conversation from what's your major to who are you?
Who are you?
Essentially, who are you as a person, and where are your strengths, and what is it you do differently?
Exactly.
And that isn't just a matter of answering that question. You mentioned before the program, it's a matter of how they dress, how they walk.
Right.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I always say, what do you want people to think about you? Right. That's what your professional brand is. What do you want people to think about you when you're not in the room? And the good news is you control that story. The bad news is you got to control that story. Right. So if you want people to think you're reliable, and you got to make sure you show up for class. You got to make sure you get your assignments in, because those very people, those classmates that you have, may be people that you're going to do business with when you leave. Those relationships are important. Those faculty members are people who are going to be giving recommendations for the world of work or for graduate school or whatever. And you want them to be able to say, yeah, this person is reliable. They show up in class. They participate and all that. So you have to think about use your nonverbal assets, if you will. How what messages are you conveying to people by your behavior? I have to tell you, I had one student in my class. I teach a seminar for first-year students, and he would always come in with the hoodie on and just looking like he was mad at the world. And he would show up late for class, and I just pulled him aside and said, "What's going on? Because you always look like you're annoyed to be here, and it's incredibly disruptive to me. So help me understand what this behavior is about." And the kid said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He said, "I've got this really bad back issue," and that's why he would get up in the middle of class and leave. And I said, "If you communicated that to me at the beginning of the semester, I would have had an entirely different experience of you."
It would have made a complete
It would have made a
difference.
complete difference in how I interpreted those behaviors. So you have to find your voice and share that kind of information with employers, with your faculty, so that we're here to help you grow, but we need to understand your worldview too.
Well, that's so important because 80% of everybody's communication is nonverbal.
Exactly.
And if you're preparing kids, like students, undergrads for career, they have to understand that the unspoken things are filled in, the blanks are filled in by the person who's listening, and they don't always fill in what you would have wanted them to fill in.
Exactly. And they don't necessarily ask you the questions. I might not know to ask you, "Oh, how's your back? Your back pain?" You got to tell me.
You don't never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Exactly.
That's really important.
Exactly.
And that's a big part of it, teaching undergraduates how to make that positive first impression in every aspect of their life, not just in their career.
Exactly.
And that really becomes a basic pride point. That also changes their other behavior, doesn't it?
Well, absolutely, because then now I'm not giving them a hard time, so they're experiencing me in a different way, and now we're fostering and building a relationship.
Right.
So it is, it's a basic law of physics, right? Positive gets positive, negative gets negative.
No, that's true.
And so again, telling them when you study science, see how that applies in life. It's just making that connection for people. So you give me a negative vibe, you're getting a negative vibe back.
You make it real for them.
Exactly. That's what you're trying to do.
Now, I think in a later segment of the program, I think I want to explore this in more detail. But for the teachers out there that are resonating with the idea that you're offering, how much of a change in a history class or in a geography class or how much of a change in my class do I need to make in order to incorporate some of these ideas?
I think that's a great question. I think it's a minor change. So it's not that you have to create a whole new lesson plan. It's just maybe an extra sentence or two in your lesson plan. So when you're teaching something, think about how might this help them in their chosen profession? What are the transferable skills or the transferable attributes that they could be thinking about? So as we talked about, whether it is studying Napoleon's leadership style or you're dissecting a piece of literature, well, if you understand how to look at characters and motivations and protagonists and all that, well, if you're in a business meeting, probably some similar positions. And so, and to be able to say, that's why this is important. Or, yes, I know doing footnotes for a history paper, the students roll their eyes and go, "I'm never going to have to do this in my life." Maybe not. But what that's teaching you is about how well do you follow instructions? How disciplined are you to pay attention to detail? And you can say that when an employer says to you, "Well, how is this relevant, your history degree?" Well, through doing all this research, I've learned how to examine an issue from all these different sides. I've learned how to put together a paper in a proper framework, and that's going to allow me to contribute to this position I'm applying to because I'm disciplined in these ways. So, but the students can't get there on their own. The Career Services Office, we certainly help them, but we can help the faculty and the teachers make those connects for students. That's all it is. It's just an extra sentence or two within your lesson plan. So
That makes perfect sense. We need to take a break. When we come back after this break, we'll explore maybe in specific terms how a teacher can incorporate some of these ideas into their class with Kathleen Brady of Georgian University. We'll be right back with more DisruptEDtv.
See you soon. Stick around.
They come to Brookdale with a passion for healthcare, cybersecurity, fashion merchandising. They graduate and transfer to universities like Georgetown, NJIT, and the Fashion Institute of Technology. They begin their careers as registered nurses, security engineers, and fashion designers. This is what success looks like. And here is where it all starts. This is Brookdale, college redefined, success reimagined. Take your next step at brookdalecc.edu.
Welcome back to DisruptEDtv, everybody. My name is Al Cini,
I'm still Joe Osamendi.
just like always. Always
absolutely.
a pleasure working with you, Joe.
too, Al.
But our guest here is Kathleen Brady. She's the Executive Director of Career Services and Corporate Engagement for Georgian University. And we're exploring her disruptive idea, which is that personal branding is an important part of university curriculum, maybe even high school curriculum. What people, and actually before the program, we talked a little bit about how most learning, I think, Kathleen, is learning by role models, emulating
Right.
people that we respect.
Right.
And what we're really talking about, what you're talking about, is how to make the students become role models so that they can be respected by others.
Right.
Because it's that respect that they get from other people that gives them the sense of pride it takes for them to be engaged in a corporation. That's the difference, I
Exactly.
think, in employee engagement.
It's interesting because Maya Angelou once said, people never remember what you do, they remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, that's very good.
And so I think all of us as educators, if we think about that, yeah, and I don't mean to diminish the technical things that we need to teach students. Those things clearly are important, but how you engage them, that's the piece that's really important. And so part of it is, if you're interested in what you're doing, that's infectious.
Right.
So even if I'm thinking, oh, that's sort of a silly job, but you believe it's a great job, and you keep, it's infectious. And so I say, I want to have what he has.
Other people want that.
I want that.
Other people want that.
So when you've got a teacher who a number of, Georgian Court has a lot of teachers. That's a big piece of our curriculum. When a student comes in and says, I want to be a teacher because my third grade teacher inspired me. I had a learning disability and she showed me that I could do this, and I want to do that for somebody else. That's powerful. That's a great, now that teacher, by emulating what she did, helped to create, and not create, but help that student to identify their own passion within.
It's an inspiration to that
She did it for me, and I want to do it for the next generation.
That's
That
what
is
one of the
interesting.
teachers get out of it too, is they see the growth of that student, or the
Right.
change in that student.
Right.
And they see them become an
Right.
adult, because that
Absolutely.
really is, that's growing up. That's
Right.
what we're talking about, is making that process comfortable and maybe a little bit more predictable.
Right.
So if I were a history teacher out there, and I'm teaching dates and events, which is often, that's kind of the bread and butter of teaching history.
Right.
A focus on the personalities of the historical figures gives a student an opportunity to build their brand based on the strengths and weaknesses they see in other. So those character studies are important, aren't
Exactly. Look at Napoleon. What drove him? Look at Hitler. What drove him? How did he make these decisions? And the timeline is important because it shows you the evolution of how someone grew and thought. And so if you can make that connection between, gee, in 1943 he was behaving this way, but these events happen, and then by 1948 he was behaving that way. So think about how you're growing and developing, but based on the life experiences you're having. It's the same process. And it's just saying something as simple as that in your class that will make a student go, I think I want to read a little bit more about Hitler, or whoever it might be, whatever it might be.
whatever that historical character
A scientist,
might be.
when
See,
rather
I was
than
thinking, and when you mention scientist, I'm thinking you're a science teacher, and of course the bread and butter of science are the facts and figures
Right.
of science, but the personalities in science become role models.
Exactly.
And so a little bit of time spent on the character of an Albert Einstein, let's say, for example,
Right.
gives a student a chance to maybe pick up a couple of those traits.
Right, and identify with them. So part of it might say, now that we've studied Albert Einstein, what characteristics did he have that you see in yourself? Or what characteristics did he have that you'd like to emulate?
Or develop.
Develop, exactly, develop,
or become more like.
and get people to start thinking about those things.
You know, Joe, that's such a powerful idea, because I think that so many kids go through school without any kind of a sense of direction or rudder.
Right.
And a lot of it is, we kind of see that as a fault in them. But the truth is, maybe we just didn't show them a direction that they could pursue. If they had been exposed to that, maybe then they would have picked up on one or two of those things.
And part of it is to show them what's possible. And I have a sign in my office that says, everything's possible. And I absolutely believe that. If you tell me right now you want to be a ballerina, I would never say to you, you can't be a ballerina. I would say to you,
I would say that too.
Most people
But
would,
you
right?
would,
Most
but
people
you
would
would,
laugh.
I know.
But I would say, okay, what is it about being a ballerina that's interesting to you?
Sure.
Right? Oh, I like
Exactly.
dance, I like to be around that. Well, what do you have to do to be a ballerina? Well,
Right.
I'd probably have to start dancing again, and you kind of go through all that. You'd have to quit your day job because you'd have to be dancing 8 hours a day. Your bones would probably be aching. And then you say, are you prepared to do those things? And then as you start thinking through what you want to do, you go, no, I don't really want to do that. Okay, so let's go back to why do you want to be a ballerina? I like to be around dance. Okay, well, what about a dancing school? You've got a background in
Be a
education,
choreographer.
or be a choreographer,
Uh-huh.
or so now you take the dream, however ridiculous the dream is, and you ask people why, and you pull out that information. What are the things about that? And then you can say, well, have you thought about this? What about that? And then they go, well, no, I don't know anything about that. Well, let's think about how do we research that? And again, I know you could do this research because you're a history major. So let's figure out how do you research what a choreographer does, and give them that skill.
That's another point to a teacher. There is no such thing as a ridiculous dream.
Exactly.
If a student expresses a desire to be something they get a bad grade in, don't laugh at it.
Exactly.
Because just because they're getting a bad grade in it now doesn't mean they always will.
Right.
And in fact, they could be an engineer, even if they're not so good at math.
Right.
They could be a writer, even if they're not so good at English.
Right.
If they say they want to be that, then support that. Try to encourage that and find out why. Ask the questions.
Ask the question why, but you also have to help them, because sometimes some of the students are unrealistic. So you want to ask them probing questions. Like I've got students who'll say to me, I want to be a doctor. And so how are you doing in your biology class? So I'm failing. So I say to them, well, tell me why you're failing. Is it? Are you getting the tutors? And I make sure they have the support that they need to get there. I had one student, God bless her, said, because the class is at 8 o'clock, I don't like going to an 8 o'clock class. Well, how badly do you want to be a doctor? And would you go to a doctor who was failing biology?
Yeah.
And then we say,
Good
well,
point.
so
Would you go to a doctor that didn't want to see you at
8 o'clock in the morning. And so then you go back to, okay, why do you want to be a doctor? And so she was talking about, the prestige and all of that. And we looked at her other grades and the courses that she was doing well in. I said, well, have you thought about law? She was doing really well in English and history classes and things like that. So it gets you the same sort of status as a doctor. And what do you think about that? Oh, I never thought about that. And so you get them thinking about those things. So you don't want to kill it. You never want to be a dream squasher.
Sure.
But at the same time, you want to help them
You want to try to help them rationalize.
rationalize
Focus
it
what
and,
they
conne-
wanna
and,
do.
con-
Try
and
to make it as
connect
real in their heads as they can.
connect what they're doing today to where they're trying to get to.
Oh,
So
that's great.
if you want to be a doctor and it's a hard subject for you, biology, they go, oh, well, I'll be better in physiology and anatomy. Okay, but you got to get through biology. All roads to graduation lead through biology. So what can we do? How can we support you to be better at that and kind of get your competency up?
No,
That's-
that is so important because career services are typically understood to be what skills do you need to have
Right.
in order to do a certain job.
Right.
But you're probing into a deeper area where
Right.
there's a certain set of life skills and soft skills that most people don't pay any attention to until maybe it's too late. And you're saying the earlier you do that in the
Better.
life of a student, the more effective they are at entering the workforce.
And we want to rethink about how we think about career services. It's not an administrative office. And again, it has administrative functions, but that's the bare bones.
Right.
We really want to think about how can we incorporate this notion of career services, mission, purpose, whatever you want to call it, into the very curriculum, the whole thing from co-curricular to the actual academics of things.
That's important. We need to take a break. When we come back, we want to talk about how we do exactly that.
Right.
Because I know Georgian Court University puts an emphasis on that.
It does.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about how you get supported by Georgian Court University and how you do that. at the
Great,
school.
absolutely.
Great. We'll be right back
Stick around.
with more of Kathleen Brady after this break. DisruptEDtv.
With both my sons entering college, I knew financial aid was going to help. I never thought I would qualify, too. I enrolled in Brookdale's culinary program and discovered a world of talent I never knew I had. After graduation, I landed an externship with David Burke's Fromagerie, and they hired me a month later. My name is Debbie Doran, and I came to Brookdale to learn a new skill. I never imagined it would take me this far.
Welcome back to DisruptEDtv. This guy's name is Joe Osamendi.
And that is Al Cini. Hello,
It's
Al.
a pleasure working with you and
Same
all
here.
of you. Thank you for joining us today. And our guest today is Kathleen Brady at Georgian Court University.
Kathleen.
And we were talking just before the break, Kathleen, about how you, as Executive Director of Career Services and Corporate Engagement, have broadened the definition of career services with the support of Georgian Court.
Absolutely.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
I think mostly because I'm really pushy, and,
Okay.
and the school is open to it. And it was, I said these are the things that need to be done. Again, the administrative things. Let's get the foundation built. Let's do that. But we need to do more. And so I said to them, I'd love to teach a class. And so they asked me if I would teach Gen 101, which is the first kind of the course for first-year students to kind of get them acclimated to school. And so it's a great way to be there talking to them about these very issues. And so I was allowed to work with the faculty to kind of give my input on how to design the class. The faculty design the class, but they would seek out, which is exactly the role I want to be in, as a consultant to them, saying, here's something to think about. How can we work this into the academic piece of things? And faculty very, very open to that stuff. I also teach a course called Career Paths for English Majors, and with students who can answer that question, what are you going to do with that, right? And so what we do in that class, it's a 1-credit course. We bring, we help them do this self-analysis. We do, what are you good at? Help them learn how to tell their story well, but we bring employers in. People that do hiring that say this is what we look for and this is how we would view an English major, and they get to hear from people who were English majors how their career evolved. And the reflections that students wrote, that was their favorite part, because again, it's people, oh, you did just what I did, and so it's a mirror for them. They can look at that.
This becomes real for them.
It becomes
Sure,
real, like,
does.
oh, okay, I do have life after college.
exactly.
There is life without a meal plan. The other class I teach is an internship and career prep class, which again, it's to get students ready for the world of work. And we do that whole self-assessment, the what career paths do you want, and we try and get them ready for the world of work. But beyond that, I've got faculty members who then, like I'm in a psychology class, in the 200 level class, they invite me to come in and sort of talk about these things. What are the services that we have available? How should you be thinking about your career? Our biology department has a bio-lit class, they call it, where I go in and I talk to those students there. And part of the original intent was to remind students that there is a career services office, because a lot of college students don't even think about it. So it's well, I don't need that. I've got a job, or I've got my own internship, and so they don't even think about it. So by being in the faculty giving us that kind of platform, some allow me to teach an entire lesson. Some, you got 15 minutes, whatever it is. But me or a member of my staff, we go and we talk to the students, tell them about the services, tell them about ways to think about their career, and then they come in and meet with us and go, well, that was inspirational, that was really inspiring, or that was really helpful. I need to know more. I don't know what I'm doing. And so it just kind of connects a name with a face for them, so they go, oh, okay, this woman's not so scary. I can go in and talk to her about things that I'm scared about. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm good. That's overwhelming for an adult, let alone an 18 or 19-year-old, to say, oh, I don't know, I am spending all this money in school, I don't know what I'm going to do, I don't know what I'm good at. And so to say, well, here's some tools, here's how we can help you do that.
Gives them another dimension of education.
Exactly.
That's terrific.
Exactly.
And you mentioned before the program, we talked a little bit about Georgian Court University. You mentioned 2,500 students total?
For 2,500.
1,700 or so are undergraduates.
About that, yes.
About that many are undergraduates. So it's a substantial school with different departments. And so you touch the history department, the psychology department, the sciences, the typical STEM,
Exactly.
science and technology type training.
Exactly.
All of that really is about preparing people for the workforce
Right.
by creating a personal brand that other people can respect. And that just
Exactly.
makes it easier to kill it on that interview.
Exactly.
That's really the point. The point is when you go out on that interview, you want to crush that interview.
Right.
And so what kind of feedback do you get from students who graduated, going into the workplace, and come back to talk?
It depends. Some of them have said, a couple of just got emails over the weekend about it took them longer maybe than they thought it was going to take, but they started the job. You got to find your point of entry. It may not be the perfect job, but find your point of entry. And one in particular from the business school got the job in finance that she wanted. She was very excited about that, and that was something we were able to help her do. And I know in our office, Jessica Evans is in charge of the corporate engagement piece, and she is a member of all the different chambers, building relationships. So when a student comes in and says, this is what I'm interested in, she can connect them to her contacts in the Girl Scouts if they want to do some kind of public service, or she's connected people to other businesses in terms of doing graphic design and other things that they might have an interest in. We get calls from schools for teachers, and she was able to connect one of our students to a teacher, and they call back and go, oh my gosh, you called about this opportunity, I interviewed, I got the job. And so those are the kinds of things, or just people that you give them direction. Where I had one woman just the other day who's an alum, because we provide this service not just to our students but to our alums who are, she was not really sure, what she really wanted to do was start her own business. And she's like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And so we kind of laid out, okay, here's some, let's look at this resource. And what about that? And have you thought about this? She sent me an email yesterday saying, I didn't think it was possible. And you showed me how it's possible. Now, she's not there yet. By breaking it down into those small, manageable steps. When you say, going to open your own business, she's like, you don't even know where to start. But you say, here's some resources. Let's go do some investigation. Then come back and let's kind of keep moving forward.
It starts with a list. It starts with a rational idea of what's required.
Right.
And you also mentioned, too, before the program, that a lot of your personal brand is about doing the things that you have to do, even though they may not necessarily be the things you want to do.
Right.
And how do you find the discipline in yourself to do those things?
Right.
Because nobody else is going to do them for you, and if they're undone, you fail.
Right. It's all about building on your strengths. So find the things that you're really good at, and then figure out who's going to pay you to do those things.
That's exactly right.
And you want to spend 80% of your time in any job doing the things that come naturally to you. Then you've got to develop the skills to be competent in the areas that you need to be. You can't just say to your boss, I'm really not good with budgets, so I'm not going to do budgets. No, you can't. But you want to make sure that you've got a job where you're not spending all of your time doing budgets and working with Excel spreadsheets. So it's those kinds of things, but you build on your strengths. Don't try and fix what's broken. Too often people say, oh, I'm not a good public speaker, so I better get better at that. Well, find a job. Yes, that's always a good skill to have, and never a bad thing.
But don't go looking for that.
Don't go looking for that. Or if writing is not your thing, don't find a job where you've got to spend 80% of your day doing writing. So you still have to learn how to write a decent email and those kind of things, which again, you then relate it back to when students are in their general education classes, those courses they're required to take, and they go, this is stupid, why do I have to do this? This is why you have to do that, because there are going to be things in your job that you don't like, that don't make sense, you don't really want to do, that you have to do, and that's part of what this is.
You got to crawl before you walk before you run.
Exactly, that's what this is teaching you.
But really the important point to me, and Joe and I really come more from the business world than the education world. If we're hiring for a position and somebody comes in for an interview, we're looking for them to express enthusiasm, to dress appropriately for the job they're applying for, to sell their strengths because they're aware of their strengths, they understand what they are. They need to be prepared to answer that question, what are your challenges? They need to be prepared to answer those questions confidently and honestly. And Georgian Court does that.
We absolutely
The important thing is that's really your core mission is to make sure that on that day when they come for that interview, they don't phone it in.
Exactly.
They're there, they're present, and they do the work that needs to be done. And I think that, if nothing else, is such a great message, I think, for the people watching the program.
I always laugh. I tell students, even when they have their resumes and they have the objective on their resume, like, you're wasting a prime piece of real estate, because the employer doesn't care. No. It's not about what you want. It does not show the value you bring to the employer to say, you're going to pay me really well, it's going to look good on my resume, you're 5 minutes from my house. Those may all be internal motivators, which are fine, but what value do you bring to the employer? How are you going to help him make his life easier?
How are you going to change my world?
Exactly. And solve his problems.
We're at that point in our program where you get to explain to your camera, how people can reach you and why they should call you. And I want to mention, too, that we talked before the program, you're also, in addition to your work at Georgian Court, you're a consultant to business.
Exactly.
Isn't that true?
Exactly.
So maybe you could talk a little bit about that as you tell people how to reach out to you.
Well, certainly at Georgian Court, it's my email address is kbrady@georgian.edu, and certainly look at the Georgian Court website at www.georgian.edu, and then you can find the career services page, and that will describe all the different things and services that we offer, especially if you're a GCU alum. Make sure you look at that. My business is called kbcareerplanners.com. You could reach me at kbc@kbcareerplanners.com. And in that role, I consult with businesses, helping them to engage their workforce in the same type of things. What are your skills? What are your talents? Make sure they're aligned in the right job, and to help them understand this is the world that you've joined. How are you going to change your ways to fit into the world, because that ecosystem is not changing for you. So if this is the job you want, you've got to figure out, are my skills, talents, values aligned with their mission? And that's the key to being engaged.
Kathleen Brady, what a pleasure having you on DisruptEDtv.
Thank you. It was great to meet you. The dynamic duo. It's great.
Total pleasure for us. And you have a great personal brand of your own, and it came through clearly. And thank you very much for appearing today.
Thanks so much.
And thank all of you for tuning in to DisruptEDtv. And my name is Al Cini.
Still Joe Osamendi.
And we'll be back with another episode of DisruptEDtv, and we hope you'll tune in.